This week on the Faculty Factory podcast.
Very early on in my role was that I actually had to spend a lot of time educating my HR professionals and colleagues on the difference between faculty and staff, and that there were legitimate differences there. And, here's what that looks like. And so I spent sessions where I would pull my HR colleagues in a room, starting with HR leadership and then working with their teams. And I would just talk about even just like the mindset of faculty, right? And I would talk about the trajectory of faculty members. How does someone get into academic medicine? What does it mean to be a faculty member? What does it mean to stay a faculty member? And how is that different from our experience as staff at the institution?
Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. On today's episode, we have Kimara Ellefson, the Associate Vice President of Talent Strategy and Faculty Affairs at the Medical College of Wisconsin. Hi, Kimara. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Kim. Thank you.
Well, Kimara, I can't help but noticing that over the many, many years I've known you through the AAMC Group on Faculty Affairs, your title was Senior Director, and now I see you have a new Associate Vice President title. We'd love to hear a story of how this promotion happened and how your career brought you into talent strategy and faculty affairs. Do you mind sharing with us your journey?
I would be happy to, Kim. I'm very excited about what I believe this title, Associate Vice President for Talent Strategy and Faculty Affairs, represents for the Medical College of Wisconsin. I have been telling people recently that I really think it's a reflection of both the influence and the impact that the Office of Faculty Affairs has had on the campus here at the Medical College of Wisconsin. I got started in faculty affairs probably just about 10 years ago now. And I often tell people that I think it's probably one of the best accidental career moves that I ever made. I was actually asked to come into the Office of Faculty Affairs by our then Dean of the School of Medicine. He wasn't fully satisfied with the services of the Office of Faculty Affairs at the time, and it was a very, very small group. I think there were probably 3 people in there total. They ended up, because of their staffing levels, really only being able to do a lot of, transactional kind of processing work, and most of it really was around the promotion and tenure process here at MCW. And our dean was looking at some of the innovative programming that we had going on in the Office of Human Resources. So my background is in psychology. I've been a human resources professional for about 25 years now. And I was living in human resources at the Medical College of Wisconsin. And I was in charge of recruitment and some other innovative sorts of succession planning and development programs that we had going on. And we were doing a lot of really exciting things for staff. And the dean of the School of Medicine really thought, I think there's some things there that are transferable. And started to think to himself, do you think that maybe they would be interested in coming over and helping to sort of reboot or relaunch the Office of Faculty Affairs? And so he approached my boss, who was the Vice President of Human Resources at the time, and she came to me and she said, Kimara, would you be up for a challenge? And I thought, I was like both parts excited and scared because the way that our model had been working here at the Medical College of Wisconsin was that as human resources professionals, we had very little, very infrequent interaction with faculty. And so at that point, yet faculty were kind of the scary group of people that I hadn't had a whole lot of interaction with.
Right.
But I thought, well, I'm up for a challenge. Let's see what we could do. And so that was 10 years ago. And I have been working in sort of this hybrid model. I never left my role in human resources. So that's where you get some of that talent strategy flavor in my title. And so I like to tell people that I sort of have a foot in both worlds. I work both in the Office of Human Resources as well as the Office of Faculty Affairs. And my job is really to, leverage the power of both of those offices to make our campus better. So that's a little bit of my story. And again, I think the AVP title is really something that our whole office, our whole operation can be proud of. It feels to me kind of like the culmination of the influence and impacts that we've been able to have on our campus over these last 10 years.
Well, this is just so interesting to me. Number one, that your dean had the wherewithal, first of all, clearly you were in HR, you were doing some good work that you were on his radar at some point, or, so he had that, you had that recognition factor, and the fact that something kind of light bulb moment went off with him about, leveraging your expertise and what you were doing in that office for faculty. So first of all, that he had that vision about it. And the second thing that fascinates me is I'm curious how you were able to introduce or build a relationship with faculty, because just like what you said, this perception of, scary medical school faculty.
Right.
And there's this whole culture around medical schools and very, very distinct kind of silos. So I'm wondering how you've been able, maybe it's in part to the dean, but could you talk to us how you were able to marry these cultures and help the faculty in the School of Medicine embrace what you were doing and make it part of their mindset versus that kind of separation of, that's HR stuff. That's not, relevant to us. So can you talk a bit about that, the strategy either leadership used or you used to bridge that gap and build the relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you asking me that question just makes me chuckle. It takes me back to one of the very first faculty meetings that I needed to be a part of after they had made the announcement that there was going to be this transition, and I and some others were going to be coming in to assist with the Office of Faculty Affairs. And the very first meeting that I attended was actually a faculty governance committee. So we are not unionized on campus, right? But I always like to say that faculty governance group is kind of the closest group. And I came in and I was going to staff and I was going to learn this. And the very first meeting, I was taking minutes about how they thought this was the worst idea they'd ever heard and how they were going to start a petition to get us, if you will, kicked out, right? And I remembered thinking, this is exactly what I thought faculty were like, big, bad, and scary, and if I could go so far, somewhat elitist, right?
Right.
And really what it came down to is just a fear of the unknown. There genuinely had not been a solid relationship between the Office of Human Resources and faculty. And the way that we were structured actually just really reinforced that. So from a faculty perspective, they had no idea who I was. I was coming in, I remember one of the quotes from that very early meeting was, but they're going to treat us like employees. Mm-hmm. And I think there was this real fear that I was going to come in and lead with kind of policies and procedures and do's and don'ts and take away academic freedom. And so I remember after that meeting, I went back to my leader's office and said, we can undo this, right? I can just go back to working in human resources if this doesn't work. And
I'm not interested in this challenge after all.
That's right. I'm no longer excited. This is not exciting to me. But I think I realized, and reflected after that first meeting that really it was about fear of the unknown and lack of relationship. And Interestingly, as Dr. Runge and I, Dr. Runge serves as our Senior Associate Provost for Faculty Affairs here. As her and I have talked about and worked through, what is our vision and mission as an Office of Faculty Affairs, the very foundational element of our office is relationships. And as I, go back to our early years, for me, that was really key, is I realized that I had to let these folks get to know who I was, and I needed to understand where their pain points were and what was or wasn't working. The dean had to have a reason that he thought this was a good idea, and so I needed to move forward and try to make that happen. In retrospect, I probably would not have had leadership make a big announcement that this is just the way it was going to be. It might have been fun to kind of pilot it or tiptoe into it a little bit, because they got very nervous about, org charts and who reported where and were the faculty, losing their power. And so what I tried to do is just not highlight any of that. When I was in faculty meetings, I only used kind of the faculty portion of my title. For a long time, I didn't necessarily highlight, and I wasn't trying to be manipulative, but it was more a sense of, we don't need to get caught up in that right now because that doesn't matter. That's just sort of a title on an org chart. I would like you all to get to know me and what I'm here to do. And so I started just having coffee and getting to know people and showing up at committee meetings and talking to the faculty leaders about what was or wasn't working. And, at the beginning, they were somewhat reluctant to even talk to me, but I was, I think, both kind and persistent. And, eventually I was able to, there were just a lot of, as you can imagine, a faculty affairs office that only had really 2.5 people at the beginning. There was a lot of low-hanging fruit that I could come in pretty quickly and help solve for them. And so I had lots of little wins at the beginning. They understood that I was there as a partner and there to listen, and I started to garner some trust. And so what was interesting was about 6 months into the experiment, I remember one of the faculty leaders stopping me in the hallway and saying, Kimara, we've changed our petition. We still are not happy about the partnership between human resources and faculty affairs, but our petition now says we want you.
Oh, my.
We just don't want you to be part of human resources. And so then I knew that my next challenge was to get them to, trust my colleagues and the larger Office of Human Resources as well. But it really had to start with them getting to know me and building that personal relationship with me. And so that's kind of been my objective and strategy really ever since.
But that is just genius. I love that nugget there. Isn't that interesting? Just by showing up, persistent. You said being kind, showing up, just being there, earning trust, taking your time, that you want them over. And I think that is a critical point for leaders to understand, that it's so important to pick the right person for the situation, who will have that kindness, that patience, that heart for understanding that they weren't coming at you out of, aggressive, malicious or malintent, but rather fear. So someone like you who had that wherewithal to have the poise and to ride through the rough times, and you earned their trust. I think that is so critical, rather than bringing in a sledgehammer and then someone who may be walking around laying down the law. This is just the way it's going to be. The dean said this, and we're going to do thus and such, and you better get in line, march, or get off the bus, kind of a thing. So I think that is really a great lesson, that you were the right person to bridge that gap. And so that's to me, a beautiful example of, again, just showing up and being there and earning their trust. What a great endorsement.
Yeah, and it was, again, I feel like it was a real experiment at the time. I think now we've really been able to, like I said, it's the foundation of everything we do in our office. It's been really rewarding and exciting to, teach the other faculty affairs professionals as our office has expanded, teach them some of those same lessons and how to get started. And it's fun for me to watch them maybe just enjoy some of that goodwill that, that we've built foundationally over all of these years, because it gives them an even stronger sort of jumping off point as they go forward. They already walk in the door with some credibility because our office is known as a valuable partner on campus, and it's fun to see the fruit of that labor, I guess, these years later.
Well, you're right, and these culture change does take time, but it sounds like you said within 6 months, just waiting a minute or two, a beat or two, you earn that trust. And so I know you want to talk about some things today, but I want to just stay here for one more second, because I'm thinking there are probably people out there listening thinking, well, this is great, and it sounds like between the School of Medicine faculty and their Office of Human Resources there at MCW, maybe the faculty, School of Medicine, really didn't know much about the OHR or human resources. They just kind of thought human resources, that's staff, that's employees, they're over there. So that's one framework or one lens of saying, well, fear of the unknown. I don't know anything about them. I'm curious that perhaps there may be people out there listening right now who say, well, that's not the case for us at our institution. Faculty are aware of HR, and it's more of an antagonistic relationship because our faculty are trying to hire clinic staff, they're trying to hire grant people, and the HR system is standing in their way and perhaps clogging up the works and is a bottleneck, and they're trying to hire people, fire people, promote people, give people raises. So there are circumstances where it may not be just like, we don't know you, we don't know anything about them, but rather you're our enemy. And so that might be even more challenging of sending, a Kimara, little bunny hopping in there trying to be all wonderful and generous. And I'm here to help you. And they want to slaughter you. So can you think of an example or perhaps some lessons for those people out there who are in this kind of an antagonistic relationship, realizing that as our budgets are getting cut and academic medicine struggles with payer reimbursement and all these struggles that we have, and realizing that in faculty affairs and faculty development, we need to get more creative with partnering with our own offices and our own institutions. And, we need to start, if we don't already, building these kind of relationships with our HR friends. How would you, or what kinds of things would you suggest or recommend to some of these maybe antagonistic relationships between HR and faculty?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I think that's an excellent question, because I think that's probably more often the situation if there's not a good relationship there, that it is less about we don't know you and more about, we already have conflict, or we don't see things the same way from a policy perspective. And we certainly had elements of that at the time, and I would argue still have elements of that from time to time. And so I often see my role as being somewhat of a bridge builder between the two camps. And so when others have approached me about, this model or how do you do this successfully, it's one of the key elements that I bring out is you need to have someone from your Office of Faculty Affairs that's willing to be a bridge builder or extend that hand to human resources and, be willing to sort of see things from both sides. So an example, I can think of many. I think hiring is a big one. I think that, performance reviews and evaluation was another big area where, we wanted to do it in one way, but what maybe worked for staff was going to be not readily accepted by faculty, or maybe even offensive by faculty, right? Because faculty have a career and a call. And yes, we want our staff to have that too. But for some of our staff, this is really, it's a job, and we're coming in and we're doing our job. And so the evaluation forms and processes and things like that need to reflect those differences. And so what I found very early on in my role was that I actually had to spend a lot of time educating my HR professionals on and colleagues on the difference between faculty and staff, and that there were legitimate differences there. And, here's what that looks like. And so I spent sessions where I would pull my HR colleagues in a room, starting with HR leadership and then working with their teams. And I would just talk about even just like the mindset of faculty, right? And I would talk about the trajectory of faculty members. How does someone get into academic medicine? What does it mean to be a faculty member? What does it mean to stay a faculty member? And how is that different from our experience as staff at the institution? And then as a result of that, what are those ramifications, right? How does that impact such and such policy or how we do this or how we do that? And so I did spend a lot of time, I guess I would say, legitimizing the differences between staff and faculty and making sure that we understood each other. I'll be honest with you, especially in those early years, I did a lot of the translating. So I might have been working with my benefits team or working with the compensation professionals, and I would get their information and I would take it to the faculty. So they would hear things through my lens first, because then I could really adjust that message. And so I had to have trust with my HR colleagues that they trusted me to kind of advance that message, which meant I was also spending a lot of time relationship building on the HR side as well. Wow. And then eventually what would happen, and again, a lot of this was iterative. I'm 10 years into this journey now, but as I would start to introduce, let's say, compensation philosophy sorts of things or hiring practices, and faculty would get more and more comfortable with the idea, then I might invite my compensation leader to the next meeting and just have them meet him. Mm-hmm. And, interestingly enough now, like that example, our compensation leader, the faculty go directly to him now. He is considered fully a part of, kind of faculty compensation. He's incredibly active and involved in the AAMC group on business affairs in terms of advancing things for medical schools. And that really all started by just sort of subtly introducing him. And then as he had credibility as my colleague, then we were able to go further. So, I hate to have it sound simplistic in terms of building relationship, because I actually don't think that's easy. It takes a tremendous amount of emotional effort and energy, but that is where I have spent a lot of my career focused is, okay, where are my barriers? Where are people not getting along? What's not happening the way it should? For me, that triggers what relationship isn't established there that needs to be, and is there a way to get that established? And I think you said it earlier, but it's then, having the patience to move forward in that. I will say that the other thing is you don't try to tackle it all in the first time. I had to look the other way on a lot of things early on that I might have said, oh, I really wish they wouldn't do it that way. Or maybe from an HR perspective, I'd kind of go, oh, that pains me. But you know what? That just was not the battle to fight. Mm-hmm. And I think I still, when I'm working with, my leaders now, it's a lot of those same conversations of, I understand that. And maybe a year from now, that'll be the battle to take on. I'm not sure it is today, and here's why. And so, learning the right timing of things as well. And so you might have to take a year and a half, 18, 24 months to build a relationship with your HR department before you're even able to talk about the first thing that you partner on. But maybe after you do that, then you find that one thing that you can partner on. And then when there's a success there, you're able to grow it. I mean, we've had 10 years of growing this partnership to the point now where if you were to look at our daily operations, you would probably not see much. You wouldn't necessarily be able to tell, well, what's FTE that's dedicated to faculty affairs and which are FTE dedicated to human resources, because we've become fairly embedded with one another. Wow. But that took a long time to get there.
And that's the marker of success, just that people don't have these clearly delineated job roles of this is this and this is that. And I just love what you just said. A couple things is, it's so hard being patient for those of us who, come from academic medicine background where we're impatient. We want things to happen fast, and we don't want to sit around and wait. So that is such a good reminder for those of us. The things that matter most in life often do take time, and being patient and slowing down and remembering that things will happen if you just kind of trust people and know that everybody wants to do a good job. I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I really want to ruin some lives and make things miserable for people.
Right.
We all want to have value and know that we are making a difference in the world. And the other thing I like that you said that is again, another great reminder is we have to bring diverse people to the teams and to the tables, and diversity not only in race and ethnicity and age and gender and offices and titles and staff and faculty. And the more diverse, the better the outcomes, because once people sit at the table and hear the conversations and hear, as you refer to, these pain points and hear what's happening, then all of a sudden there's these aha moments where, as you described, people go back to their home offices or, work areas and go, oh my gosh, I had no idea, because we have so many preconceived notions of, they're HR. Of course they must understand blah, blah, blah. And HR is probably thinking, well, they're faculty. Surely they must understand or know about blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
Fact, no, we don't. And, neither party, we're so embedded and we're so in the weeds that we really, it's a kind of that aha of stepping back, being patient and saying, okay, wait a minute. We have to go back to HR 100 or 100, 101 or faculty 101. This, you cannot make the leap X steps ahead and make assumptions that people know or understand your perspectives or your policies or how you operate. We have a couple advisory boards for junior faculty and senior faculty for our Office of Faculty Development. And shortly after we put those together, I said, we need to have our HR organization development folks at this table. And it was the same thing. I mean, at first it was kind of like when she introduced herself, there was, the proverbial and the actual outright eye rolling, like, oh, here we go. And faculty just unloaded. And I thought, oh my. But, I said that this is good to hear and good to share. And I remember that the HR or OD person was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And I'm like, well, this is good. I don't take it personally, but now you understand, we have to have people come to faculty senate meetings. You have to hear these conversations and go to faculty meetings and go to committee meetings just to understand what are people struggling with, both sides of that. So I like how you suggest to folks, go to the meetings, be there. Yep. And then once you have this comfort, invite colleagues so that everybody else can get, understand where they can bring value, where they can have ideas. And so that diversity and hitting that, getting people to the table is so right. And I see that over and over and over again. And as you said, the crux is relationships.
Right.
People don't, you hear people talking and sharing, and then the ideas start generating. Well, hey, I could do this. We could just subtly tweak that.
Right. Yeah, it's very powerful. And, I think once, titles and hierarchy become less important when we're starting to do really good work together in a sense of partnership. And, I think that's one of the other things that we've seen over the years is, and I talk a lot about balancing. So we always honor the accomplishments of our faculty members and what it has taken to get to where they are in their journeys and their careers. But we also don't let that stop us from entering into how we can help them as well, right? Because, initially when you've not had maybe that same interaction with faculty members, it can feel intimidating.
Right.
Or it can feel out of reach. And so that ability to be able to balance that. And I think I remember maybe one of the first times earlier in my career in faculty affairs where I said something that felt, I think it was just some organizational development kind of theory thing that was germane to the conversation at the moment. And it felt so basic to me. This had been part of my schooling. It had been part of and I remember these faculty members were looking at me like I was Einstein in that moment, like it was just, it was something they'd never thought about, and it just made so much sense. And I thought, wow, back in the circles that I run in, this is just stuff we know. Like everyone just knows this. Do you not know this? And I think that was, one of those, early moments for me to realize that we do all have something to offer each other as well.
Right. That's right.
And so, in addition to be able to have, and I think this happened to me on my journey along the way too, just even as I gained confidence to be able to say, not only can I go in and serve and support the faculty, which I believe is one of the fundamental roles of an Office of Faculty Affairs, that the way that I serve and support the faculty is also not just sort of like delivering on services, but is also to bring my thought leadership to the table. And I'm always encouraging that of my staff as well as they're out there that, they need to hear from you as well. And don't just assume because these are brilliant individuals with all of these initials after their names, and you maybe have less initials after your name, that you don't have some thought leadership to bring to them as well. And I think that's one of the other things that has helped to really encourage our influence on campus, as well as being willing to open our mouths too at the right time.
I love it. Wow. That is so powerful. Yeah. Everybody brings value. You're exactly right. And the only way people can feel, as you say, confident or comfortable, is being in a safe environment where the culture allows that. And so it sounds like at MCW, you've built that relationship and that culture where people are willing to speak up and know that they're going to be safe and not shot down and they will be heard. So that's so important. And I love that you've built that model up there.
It's the diversity aspect, I think, that you were talking about. Early on when our combined offices were launched, we were the Office of Faculty Affairs and Diversity. We had a different Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs at the time. And so one of the other things that I think our office has done well, and maybe this is where the AVP title comes from as well, but is we've been able to identify things that are needed on campus, play in that space for a little while to get it going. And, I like to call it, we birth ideas and movements and initiatives, and we nurture them as long as they need us to nurture them. But our hope is that eventually they find a home somewhere. And so I like to think of, kind of faculty affairs fingerprints all over campus. But one of those areas was diversity and inclusion. And I think that, being so focused on that so early on, now we have a chief diversity officer. We have an office with 5 diversity and inclusion specialists in it. But at the time, it was myself and the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs that were moving those initiatives forward on campus. And I think a lot of it was that focus, Kim, as you were mentioning, that helped me, think through some of those things. And so we did little things now very, very iteratively. It wasn't like just one day I did this, but, we have name tents at a lot of our meetings or search committees so that people know who each other is and we don't have to go through that embarrassment. And, it used to be for faculty members, we had their name and then whatever degrees or initials were after their name. And so we would put that all together and inevitably we would get 2 or 3 of them wrong. And it was this offensive thing. And, and eventually I said, again, this took a little bit of time, but I said, what if at this next meeting we just put people's first and last names?
Yeah.
And we didn't do doctor, and we didn't do, because we have both staff and faculty on a number of these committees. And so, I don't know, that was probably 6 years ago. We haven't put initials or doctor or anything on name tents in 5 or 6 years. And I think it was, and again, I always say not to not honor the accomplishment, right? There's a place and a time for those things, of course. But there are also times when it's helpful if we're just all in the room together, being thought partners and moving things forward. And so sometimes it's little things like that I think have helped to create our environment as well, where we have, and I would never say that we don't have any staff faculty hierarchy issues, but they certainly are far less. And it sounds funny that changing the name tense would be part of it, but I do think all of those little things actually impact.
Oh my gosh, I love it, and I learned so much from these interviews. This is so great. It just making me think about just the small things like this, the small things that we who spend our whole lives studying and trying to be these, live the life of the mind, and things have to be so complex and so complicated. And sometimes these simple things and these simple realizations of, let's pare this down. We are human beings. We are people. We all have stories. We all have families and come from families and come from, things and life events that happen to us. And we find ourselves in this place wanting to make a difference. And you've earned these credentials and degrees. Yeah. And guess what? After a period of time, when you know someone, you do end up calling them by their first name. So that simple adjustment is like, naturally over time, friends use first names because that's how human beings interact. And it just, those simple things of, you're making me think of, I just unfortunately found myself voted in on my homeowners association board. It was an awful day in my life. And the first thing I said was at the meeting, I was like, well, I understand that, boards of directors and town councils and city whatevers, operate in this kind of a format. But I find the fact that, the five of us sitting at this table facing the 5 or 6 people who are fellow neighbors in our own community across from us, I said, this seems really adversarial. Can we maybe just sit around a table, all of us together? Mm-hmm. And that kind of the eyebrows going up, well, that's just not the way we've done it. And I'm like, well, but is there something that bylaws that says we have to be seated across tables as if we're like in litigation?
Right.
And that kind of just a subtle shift. I love the way you talk about the name tables, because inevitably someone comes up to us after every meeting and says this letter or this title or that title. And, so that's that balance of respect, but then realization that, come on, folks, we're not at a professional conference. This is in our own home. We're at home here. This is our own family. We don't have to call each other by titles necessarily.
Right. And I think that's the difference. It's understanding that, right? Like if it's convocation, and let's get out the regalia and let's bring the titles and let's celebrate and honor those achievements. If there's a lot of people from the outside, like you said, if it's a big conference or something, then we always have that title and the respect. But there is a point in time, and I even like when we're bringing new folks into the team, it's doctor until they tell you it's not doctor. You know what I mean? And we talk about how do you do some of these things so that we are always being respectful. But you're right. There's a moment at which we are all humans. We're all part of the humanity. I think a lot of our diversity and inclusion work here at MCW focuses on being able to bring, the full sense of who you are to the table every day. And I think that has resonated both for staff and faculty, because I think even for faculty at times, there's a lot of moments where they would like to just sort of show up as themselves, if you will.
Right.
And, be able to have that human aspect to our interaction. So it is the art of it. It's interesting, Kim, because I think even as we've thought about like who we hire into our Office of Faculty Affairs and frankly, who we hire into our Office of Human Resources, I will tell you that is a challenge for us, because all of these things that we're talking about don't fall in some sort of manual somewhere that you can open up and say, do this.
Right.
do that. It's not a very black and white process. There's a lot of gray. There's a lot of critical thinking. I talk a lot about needing to be really aware of our environments and what's going on and setting the right environment for relationships to be built and trust to be established. And that isn't done well when you're a real black and white thinker. Mm-hmm. And so trying to figure out the right talent to bring in to help support what we're doing, that has also, I think, been an evolution for us over the years, again, both in human resources and faculty affairs. And as that partnership has gotten stronger, we've been able to think a lot more about the professionals that we're bringing into both offices together to make sure that they really help support this culture that we're trying to build. Right. On the other hand, the person that I have doing our promotion and tenure process and supporting all those committees, they are brilliant at what they do, and they're very black and white, right? I actually don't want that person thinking too much in the gray. I do need them to kind of make sure we stick to our faculty handbook and the rules are what the rules are in certain, right? And so, it does take some, and I guess maybe that's where the talent strategy person in me comes out a little bit stronger, is understanding the right people for the right roles.
That's right. I can't help but think of the Myers-Briggs when we talk about
that's right.
different personality preferences. You're going to want someone on your team who is the feeler and the thinker and
that's
the
right.
judger and the perceiver. You
yes.
need all those, and recognizing our own weaknesses or areas where we have to work a little harder. That, geez, life's a lot better when you can have someone on your team or in your inner circle who has that gift or that preference. So
that's right.
Yeah, it's perfect. Well, you've already inspired and encouraged me. And what else? I know you wanted to talk about something new or innovative or things you're excited about. What else did you want to share with our community today, Kimara?
Absolutely. Thank you. I think the thing that we're probably most excited about at the moment, we have spent the last year really focused on faculty well-being on what I would consider to be a personal level. What sort of techniques and support mechanisms can we put in place to assist with the well-being of our faculty? This year, we're starting to tackle some of that at more of the systemic level, and so that's the tougher stuff. But we're really excited about some of the partnerships that we've been able to, again, relationships, right, build with some of our hospital partners, some of our other affiliate partners to begin to look at themes we've been hearing from our faculty members around things that are just systemic. They are inherent in their workday or what they're asked to do throughout the day that, as we jokingly say, you can tell me to meditate all day long, but if this is still a huge irritant for me, exactly. There's probably no amount of meditation that is going to help get me through so that. True. Right? And so we're really going to start to tackle that this year. I'm very excited about that. I am not naive in that I don't believe that it will be easy, but I'm excited about the challenge and the potential impact that will have on our faculty and our staff. So I would say, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I would love to hear, if you wouldn't mind, just giving us a real quick overview. It sounds like you've broken up your faculty well-being initiative into the personal and systemic level. Yeah. So it sounds like it was staged such that you maybe had some initiatives around the personal individual level, and now you're moving on. But could you just briefly kind of run through a couple highlights of what were the themes or what you did at that personal level, and then how you decided to now, okay, moving on to the next?
Yeah, so we really started talking about faculty well-being, and I know that sounds simple, but oftentimes there's power in the perception that my organization cares and that my organization values my well-being. And so we had our dean of the School of Medicine and our president of MCW, put messaging out about how taking care of yourself was important. And then we created toolboxes. We actually implemented the Well-Being Index, which is a tool that you can use to, assess the well-being of your faculty and then build resources into that faculty members can take advantage of. We've had some really nice utilization of that tool. We really tried to equip our department chairs. We've put some videos together that highlight some real known faculty on campus and then some of our newer faculty on campus talking about their well-being practices.
Oh, I love it.
So I guess I would say we've just tried to make it a little bit more part of our DNA. Like, we're a place that values well-being, and some of this stuff maybe sometimes can sound a little woo-woo, and so we wanted to try to make it like practical for people to say, no, there's something powerful in this. And I think we've realized, I think Dr. Runge and I have realized as we've been going out that, that everyone is starting to say, yeah, okay, we got it. And we're doing these things, and we're grateful for these things. So thanks for spending, the last 18 months or whatever doing this. But now I've got this incredible irritant over here, and I'm really wondering if you're going to start to address that.
Uh-huh. Good.
So I think that's been, so for us, we started with the personal because we knew it was something we could do. The systemic, especially at the beginning, as we were looking at, we have faculty that work in hospitals that we don't own. We have, right? It felt big, and it felt like we weren't sure how we could tackle it. I think that's becoming maybe a little bit clearer for us at this point, and I think we're going back to our foundational tactics of let's build relationships, let's get ourselves on the committees, let's understand where the hospitals are coming from, let's understand what the pain points are on both sides, and then see if we can't, influence and push some change through it. So I have no idea what it's going to look like at the end of this year, but we know that we're starting by, again, as we just said earlier, getting at the table, sitting at the table, getting all the voices at the table instead of just like, well, those hospital partners do this, and
right.
Well, those faculty won't do that.
Right.
Let's get everybody around the table and start to figure it out. And I think as faculty affairs professionals, at least at MCW, we find that that's the power of our role is, bridge building and sometimes I consider myself like a professional matchmaker in terms of ideas and resources and relationships and, trying to bring this all together with the motivation of, making this a better place and moving us forward.
Love it. Now, operationally, how does this happen? Do you have a well-being committee, or do you have a chief wellness officer? How does this look like? Who owns these projects?
So we do not have a chief wellness officer at the moment, though you could argue that Dr. Runge in our office serves as that, and she could add that to her business card if she wanted to, but it hasn't been formalized. And so we have a wellness committee, an MCW wellness committee that is run and owned by our office right now. So it reminds me a lot of diversity issues 6 years ago where there wasn't anywhere else for it to live. It was a real need. We knew it was going to be good for our community, so we owned it and moved it forward until it could find a place to live. I think well-being and wellness will likely be the same. It's owned by us. It's moved forward by us right now. At some point, my guess is it will live somewhere else where we will still have a great opportunity to partner, but someone else will take it on. We also have wellness consortiums with our hospital partners and other affiliate hospitals. So we make sure that we sit on those wellness consortiums as well, and work hard to, bring those initiatives together.
I really, this is the second time now you've said this, and I like this metaphor of you in your office birthing ideas, nurturing them, and then hoping they get adopted somewhere. I love that. And I'm thinking in my head of like these Rover Rescue. I'm thinking of adopting a dog and all these like dog pet adoption sites where I picture your office going, here's a program we started on personal wellness and a little bio, and I can click on it. It's a great picture, and somebody could say, yeah, I'll adopt you. And they click on it, and okay, Department of Medicine now has adopted that idea. Yep. So I love your metaphor of birthing ideas and nurturing ideas and hoping your ideas get adopted somewhere.
Yeah, it's been great. Our awesome center, which is the Advancement of Women in Science and Medicine, which is really one of our newest centers on campus, which is truly designed to research how we advance women into more leadership roles within the academy, if you will. The last 2 or 3 years, that's been living in faculty affairs, and now it has, birthed itself into its own center and its own initiative. So I do think that's a hallmark of ours. It's a philosophy that I think I've had from the beginning. Certainly, again, our senior associate provost, Dr. Runge, she's an idea person, in all day long. So this also, I think, matches really well with her personality. She's got a lot of energy and a lot of drive, and so she too loves to just grab these things and run with them and take them as far as we can, and then hopefully hand them off to someone who'll do a great job with it.
Yeah, definitely. Chris is amazing. We had her on the podcast early on. I think back in January, I interviewed her. She's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
Yep,
lots
absolutely.
Of you too, MCW. Wow, they hit a home run with you too.
Well, we do believe very strongly, as I know a number of other places do, but really in that dyad partnership model. And I would say that's the other thing that I think is powerful about the office is, faculty affairs should be run by a faculty member, and there should be a deep faculty presence there. And then I, on the staff side, really get to help Chris execute on that vision and that strategy and figure out how to do that. And so we've got that same sort of faculty staff partnership model in a lot of different areas within MCW, and we found it to be a very powerful model.
Amazing. I can't help but go to budget issues. Now, without getting into all the gory details you've talked a lot about relationship building and going to meetings and having discussions and just being present. And that certainly costs money. I'm wondering if any of the personal well-being or the systemic well-being, even though you've not really identified what those will be, if any of those ideas has had a big financial footprint, and how does it work? And if so, can you speak essentially is what I'm asking to a budget? So for example, at Hopkins, we're not given a budget. We're just told we don't have any money. Don't spend any money. I imagine in some other world that other people actually do have budgets, and that would be a fantastic concept. So I'm wondering how your offices and your partnerships deal with money and budget, and especially when you're birthing and nurturing these ideas and then you're giving them up. I mean, do these come with price tags? How do you decide, we don't have a budget to do that, but maybe somebody else will adopt it and they can do it?
Right. So we do have a budget. It was one of the things 10 years ago I inherited, which was great. And then, of course, human resources has a budget. And so I have the luxury of being able to play with both, if you will, to make sure that ideas get funded. Now, I would hate to send the message that those budgets are flush with money, that we just have the freedom to go out and do whatever we want, because at the end of the day, we are still overhead for the institution. And so we do have, but we do have budget. And so, for Chris and I, it's really a matter of looking at the priorities every year to see, where are we going to spend that money. There have been times where we have had to give up some of that budget to go with our launched idea. Most of the time, what we've attempted to do is to say, for instance, yes, we're birthing diversity and inclusion. It's leaving us, but here's what we're going to do next. And so this is why this money should stay with us. Mm-hmm. And you should find additional funds to fund that new initiative. And I'll be quite frank, sometimes we've held on to things and haven't launched them yet because the institution hasn't been ready to fund them, and we're not ready to lose that money. So then, we'll hang on to that work a little bit longer. Some of the work that we're doing around well-being has actually been philanthropy. So we had a number of individuals in the Milwaukee community that were very interested in making sure that our doctors were well and had some passion around well-being and wellness, and so donated money for our video project. And so we've tried to be creative with where some of the money comes from. And then, I don't know, the systemic pieces, I'm really hoping we're going to be able to, leverage the money that our hospital partners have. And there have been a number of times where I've leveraged programs or things that they already have going on that are funded and said, wouldn't it be a great idea if you brought that to our physicians as well? Because they're the ones providing care in your hospital. And they say, oh, that's a great idea. And they fund it. So, some of it is, again, just really trying to be creative with limited resources. But we do have dollars. We do have some dollars to work with every year.
So I just picked myself up off the floor from about 50 seconds ago when you said your community philanthropy, community corporate sponsors. say, gee willikers, we want
Yep.
all those faculty at MCW to be happy and well. How in the world do they do corporate leaders know that burnout is an issue? So this goes to a marketing thing. I mean, so I'm curious how this happened. And then how this beneficence of going, oh, I'm just going to go, write a check to MCW to help their faculty. Because I'm thinking, again, there may be people out there going, oh my gosh, in my community, the corporate leadership say, oh, that place, Hopkins, they're flush. Those physicians are rich. They don't need anything. They're taking over the city. They're these, big, whatever. And in fact, it's wrong. Our faculty are at the 20th percentile in salary, so we don't have money. Right. But how in the world does this work in your community that corporate sponsors are so generous and caring to your faculty?
Well, I have to give credit to our development office, to our chief development officer. As they've been out cultivating relationships, they're listening to what is important to these individuals and then making those connections back. We also work very hard to make sure that our board of trustees is educated around what's going on in the world of academic medicine. And so we know that faculty and physician burnout has been an issue for us. It's hitting the national, it's been on the national stage, right? And so we work hard to, at least once a year, be educating our board of trustees on some of these issues. And so, in this particular case, our chief development officer is out there nurturing relationships. We're educating them and the board of trustees around what are some of the biggest challenges that we're facing as an academic medical center. And, a connection is made. A connection is made that there is a family member of a very wealthy family in town that deeply values wellness. This family's had a solid relationship with MCW. And so after about 6 or 7 months of conversation and cups of coffee and educating on, physician burnout and different things like that, the next thing it's let's partner and do this. I'm really excited about, making MCW physicians well and, of course, selling what we are to the community. So again, it didn't happen overnight, right?
Right.
But it did happen. And again, I have to give lots and lots of credit to our development officers who are out there listening for these themes and then thinking about how they can connect that back within our organization.
And this is another critically important point that speaks to diversity again. Yep. That we in faculty affairs and faculty development should be working with HR, development, philanthropy, getting a seat at the board of trustees table. So this is a great idea to take home to say, go back to our institutions and ask our deans, can we have you? I'll personally say in the 6+ years I've been at Hopkins, I have no level of awareness that we in our field, our space of faculty development, faculty affairs, have ever been invited to a board of trustees meeting to raise these issues. So this is another important nugget that diversity runs, horizontal and vertically across all levels and up and down. That I bet you there are people, certainly here in Baltimore, and those of us listening on the podcast in our own towns who would love to contribute. And that would be something that they're just not aware of. And as you're talking, Kimara, it made me think, because we started the academy on our medical campus, which is a new center for our retirees from the School of Medicine, School of Nursing, and School of Public Health. And this is a great thing for late career faculty members transitioning into retirement or thinking about how can I contribute. That this is, of course, now we're talking about alums or philanthropy to the point of retirees, but certainly I can imagine there may be some faculty members actually who have retired and are thinking about what kind of legacy can I leave? Well, in part, it might be the fact that I'm seeing burnout and I'm seeing that
that's right.
Maybe part of the reason why I'm deciding to transition out is because it's becoming very difficult. And wow, I never thought about, that's true. I could leave some money or contribute some of my treasure to this ongoing initiative with faculty affairs. So there are just so many opportunities and people, I think, want to volunteer and give time and share their talent, but unless they know about it and unless people have are at tables and share in these conversations. They just simply aren't even aware. So that's another great nugget you've brought to us, Kimara. So thank you.
You're welcome.
You've shared so much with us. And before we leave, was there anything else? I kind of took you off a couple side roads there. Was there anything else you wanted to share with us to inspire or encourage us?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, other than, and I think, this might be a little bit of preaching to the choir as I think about who's likely listening, but I do think that, moments like this when we can reflect and listen and learn from what our colleagues are doing across the country are always such a good reminder of the value that this work does bring. I think to your point, sometimes it can feel very sort of unseen and maybe not as trumpeted, but I do think to pause and take that moment, like I like to say, looking for your fingerprints across the organization, because I think that is what we get to do as faculty affairs professionals, is really impact the lives of both our faculty and our institutions as a whole by doing some stuff that I think is really exciting and really fun. And if we're willing to be creative and step out and risk it a little bit, right, and maybe, venture into an area that isn't always just traditionally faculty affairs, I think there's some really, really great opportunities that exist out there. So I would just encourage you to, again, be encouraged in what you're doing and to look for those creative opportunities.
That's just so wonderful. And you're so right. And thank you for reminding us of that in this difficult work that we are providing value, and then people do appreciate us, and our work is meaningful, and it's sometimes hard to measure and sometimes hard to explain to people, but we know that it's making a difference. And you've put it really well, and clearly what you're doing at MCW with Chris Runge is just fantastic work. So I think you two should organize a little mini sabbaticals for faculty affairs and faculty development folks to come up to Wisconsin, maybe not in winter, but in the summer to come.
Right now is a great time.
Hang out with you two up there. Well,
sounds good. I will get on that.
Okay, I'd be the first. I would love to do mini sabbatical things, and we could do exchange programs for faculty affairs.
Oh, that would be so powerful, I think.
I love it. Well, folks, you've been listening to Kimara Ellefson, the Associate Vice President of Talent Strategy and Faculty Affairs at the Medical College of Wisconsin. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.